Yesterday, the CEOs from Facebook, Twitter, and Google faced the Senate in mostly virtual hearings over their role in internet censorship and the protections they receive under Section 230. So Section 230, if you're not familiar with it, if you're unclear, it's the section that gives internet companies basically, it gives them protections that they cannot be held liable for content their users post. So the idea of it is it's meant to be where, look, the internet is supposed to be just this sort of wild, wild west in a way. You're just connecting people one from the other, and you are not liable by connecting them. You're not liable with what they might post or what they might say during that connection. So it's treating internet companies such as Facebook, Google, and Twitter as utilities and not so much as publishers. That's the idea behind Section 230. So yesterday in the Senate hearing, you could pretty much guess what happened. Senators from the Republican side were saying, why are you guys censoring content? We feel like it's a bias against conservatives. Senator Ted Cruz really went after Jack Dorsey for this one from Twitter, saying, how dare you? You're the one that, actually, I could read you exactly what he said. He said, Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you and put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report? Also, you've got other people, Jack Dorsey, he said Section 230 is the internet's most important law for free speech and safety. And he claimed that weakening the protections offered by the law would change the fabric of the digital world. Also, Mark Zuckerberg, who was testifying, said Congress should update the law to make sure it's working as intended. He said he supports change because more clarity around the content moderation benefits everybody, including the platforms. So the idea behind this entire hearing that the Senate was holding yesterday is regarding Section 230 and whether or not they should change or even repeal Section 230 altogether, which is this protection for these internet companies. And some of them are saying, look, we are going to get rid of it altogether because you guys aren't acting like vehicles helping people connect one to the other. Instead, you're acting as publishers because you guys are going around and actually censoring the content. You're actually saying, no, this is dangerous, and so therefore we're removing it, or this is going to be allowed. And because it really does seem to be, against Donald Trump or against conservatives. Meanwhile, social media companies do not censor content that's being posted by foreign governments that are considered, brutal dictatorships such as Iran, the Ayatollah, for example. They don't seem to censor his content, but they do censor Donald Trump. And so a lot of these guys are saying, look, you don't have any rhyme or reason to why you're doing this. You're just clearly biased. And so you are acting as a publisher. You're acting like you are censoring or curating content for your liberal audience, and therefore you don't deserve protection when you're clearly not operating as just a public utility. You're operating instead as a publisher. Democrats, on the other hand, they were actually saying, look, we want to repeal or modify Section 230 because we think you need to be tougher on when it comes to censoring. We think you need to do more of this censoring. And so therefore, you don't deserve this protection, or we're at least going to threaten to remove these protections unless you do more. And really, I think the point of this Senate hearing yesterday was to intimidate these three CEOs, Jack Dorsey and Sundar Pichai and Mark Zuckerberg. I think it was meant to intimidate them, and in order to get them to behave the way that either the Republicans or the Democrats want them to behave. Democrats wanting them to do more censoring and Republicans wanting them to leave it alone. I side with Republicans on this issue. I am very disappointed in the Democratic lawmakers that they're calling for more censorship. I want to play this clip for you. This is Senator Ed Markey, and he's actually a fairly progressive. He's from Massachusetts. He's actually a fairly progressive senator. He was the one that was just recently challenged by the Kennedy guy. And the Kennedy guy in the primary lost. He thought that he could go against Markey. He was clearly just trying to career climb. But Markey actually, was one of the, he's the senator that helped AOC write the Green New Deal. But this is a very disappointing take on Ed Markey's part. Here he is in the Senate hearing.
The issue is not that the companies before us today are taking too many posts down. The issue is that they're leaving too many dangerous posts up. In fact, they're amplifying harmful content so that it spreads like wildfire and torches our democracy.
Yeah. Okay. So he's saying that they're not doing enough censoring, that they're leaving too many dangerous posts up. This is the take that many Democrats had over and over in the Senate hearings yesterday. Meanwhile, again, Republicans were defending free speech. Now, I want to play also this clip for you because this is important. This is Jack Dorsey being asked about whether or not social media has influence on elections. This is from Senator Ted Cruz. Here's this.
Mr. Dorsey, does Twitter have the ability to influence elections?
No.
You don't believe Twitter has any ability to influence elections?
No, we are one part of a broad spectrum of communication channels that people have.
So you're testifying to this committee right now that Twitter, when it silences people, when it censors people, when it blocks political speech, that has no impact on elections?
People have choice of other communication channels with which.
Not if they don't hear information. If you don't think you have the power to influence elections, why do you block anything?
Well, we have policies that are focused on making sure that more voices on the platform are possible. We see a lot of abuse and harassment, which ends up silencing people and having them leave from the platform.
Yeah, okay, so that was a really good line of questioning from Senator Ted Cruz. Look, if Jack Dorsey doesn't believe that Twitter can influence elections, why are they censoring anybody at all? And if he's saying, no, we cannot influence elections, then that completely trashes the entire argument that the Democrats have been using for the last 4 years as to why these CEOs need to be implementing more censorship. They're saying for the sake of our democracy, you need to be censoring more. For the sake of our democracy, you guys need to be moderating and curating content because, oh no, the boogeyman is out there, the boogeyman being Russia. And now the boogeyman is just fake news. And so therefore, you guys need to be doing something about it because Americans' minds are being influenced. This is influencing Americans' elections. This is against democracy. Jack Dorsey saying, no, it isn't. We don't have any influence over elections. So he basically just trashed the entire argument. And Ted Cruz brings up a good point. Then why are you censoring anything at all? Now, one thing that these executives were trying to say in this whole thing was, look, and Jack Dorsey brought this point up, and he says, bullying, we try to censor against bullying because bullying and hate speech causes more censorship. People are silenced when they're bullied. People are silenced when they're afraid. And that, I think, we do have to have some conversations about bullying, about threats to individuals online. We saw a big, before 2016, there was a lot of conversation about youth being bullied and then, killing themselves and tragic events happening because of bullying online. And I do think that's something that we need to address in some ways, but very delicately, because censorship has to be handled very, very delicately. However, I don't know how the New York Post article about Hunter Biden's laptop is bullying. That's not bullying. And to say, oh, well, we need to remove this article because it's hate. How could you possibly classify it as hate speech or bullying? Now, if you don't believe it, that's up to you to not believe it. You don't have to believe every story you read. And I would really like to know from Facebook and Twitter and Google, do they censor and take down content from the National Enquirer? Do they censor and take down content from In Touch Weekly? These gossip magazines that clearly and obviously tell lies about celebrities and aliens that have impregnated celebrities and, all of this radical, crazy, obviously fake content. Are they censoring and removing that content? And if they're not, then this is clearly, it is bias against a group of people that they're saying, oh no, we just don't want this groups of people and their opinions and their thoughts and their fake news and their lies. We don't want that to circulate around. And I've said this before, look, snake oil salesmen are as old as time. They've been around forever. It is up to you to decide if you're going to believe your neighbor and the things they tell you, the stories they tell you or not. It's up to you to make that determination. And look, I don't know how society just lasted this long without fact checkers swirling around everybody's heads. Could you imagine fact checkers running around in communities saying, don't believe this person at that house when you go over there for coffee? Just no, they lie to you all the time. Maybe a notice being put on their door. They lie, enter at your own risk. This is just this is clearly, I think, an absolute abuse by these tech companies. Mark Zuckerberg, to his credit, has actually been the best, the better of the two between him and Jack Dorsey. Mark Zuckerberg took a long time. He's the one who's much, much slower to move towards censorship in any sort of way, but he has been as of late. And that is, since 2016, since they've been pressuring him more and more and more, he has been the slowest of them, but he has ultimately caved to the pressure. And that is a shame. At the end of the day, these social media companies should be considered utilities. They help me connect to you, and that's it. And they should not be censoring us. And it's up to you if you want to believe me. It's up to you if you want to listen to what I say. You don't have to. I'm not forcing myself and my show onto you. You're choosing to watch right now. You are choosing whether or not you want to believe me, and many of you don't. You make it clear in the comments. So, this whole idea that we need big tech in order to do more censoring the way Senator Ed Markey and the Democrats are calling for is absolute nonsense. And it is, I am absolutely disappointed in the many Democrats and in the many progressives who are increasingly calling for more and more censorship. That is dangerous. I don't want to live in that America, and none of us should want to live in that America. But it's very, very sad and beyond sad. It's scary to me that I see progressives, even progressive channels that are also doing independent media shows, are calling for more censorship. Are you out of your minds? You're out of your minds. They will come for you. It's only a matter of time when you are the one who they are saying is fake news, or you are the one who has dangerous opinions. It is only a matter of time. And once you go down that slippery slope road, and this is the one thing that Democrats never learn their lessons on, because Democrats always bend the rules for their favor of what they think is beneficial for them, and it comes back to bite them in the ass. And censorship will be one of them. If they say, look, we don't want all of this crazy conspiracy conservative theories going around out there, one day when the conservatives have all the power, they will come after all of that crazy socialist communist rhetoric. They will. And they'll label everybody, each and every one of us who wants things like Medicare for all. They're going to say, "Oh, you're a crazy commie," and we'll be living back in the 1950s again. So where they're going after anybody that they thought was a Russian. And one thing I want to point out again, and I'll link to this video down below. It was a video I did a while ago, and it was about the Espionage Act and treason in America, and the history of who has been charged with espionage and treason in this country. And half of the people who have been charged in this country for those two crimes, treason and espionage, have been journalists, radio show hosts, newspaper writers. Those were the people that, we see it now with Julian Assange, Edward Snowden. We see right now that these are the people who are being prosecuted and charged with treason and espionage. And that is what happens when it's this whole world of you should not speak. Your words are dangerous, or the things you print, the things you say, that's dangerous. And they'll eventually come after you. And it's not about just these social media guys. This is multi-layered on how it affects us in our lives. This is social media, at the basic level of social media. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, but they're private companies." And I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again until I'm blue in the face. They're private companies, but they are being pressured by Congress. They're being pressured by our government to behave in a certain way. And the way our government should be pressuring them is to continue to protect our free speech. That is, I think, an appropriate role for government to say, listen, there's a chilling effect when on a societal level, on a cultural level inside of communities, if you on a cultural level start to say, no, we want to censor, it eventually trickles up into government. because where do politicians come from? They come from your community. So if the community believes in censorship on a community non-government level, it'll eventually go into your government. And that is something we must guard against, something we must protect. So even if you say, well, these are social media companies, they're private, they could do whatever they want, just remember, this is your fellow citizen. This is your fellow community, people in your community. And eventually those people become government leaders. And eventually they make laws that regulate your lives. And this is just something we absolutely need to be guarding against. So, right now, the what is next with these hearings is the senators. There's been a bunch of different legislation proposed by various different senators regarding Section 230. Some are making modifications. Some are calling for repeals. However, nothing is going to vote. There's no formal votes on anything yet. I suspect nothing really will be voted on anytime soon on this. I think that a lot of this is just trying to use their influence as senators to try to get these guys to behave in a certain way. And so they're kind of threatening at this point. But if they don't, if the Republicans are able to hold the Senate, then I think we might, I don't think we're going to see anything happening really with Section 230. However, if Democrats win the Senate and they win the House and they get the presidency, we might see some changes to how these social media companies censor us. In fact, we might see a lot more censorship coming from them, especially as we head into next election years in 2024. So they'll say, oh, no, you've got to censor all that conservative stuff because we don't want people to actually believe anything from the right. We can't have that. We must hold on to our power, maintain our power, and ensure that the American people believe everything that we throw at them and never get any alternative viewpoints. That is a dangerous place to live, guys. That is a dangerous place to live. And that's not somewhere I want to live. So I side with Republicans on this one. Absolutely. I want less intervention from these social media giants. Absolutely. We must protect our freedom of speech.